At our baby's baptism, my husband's mother stood up and announced, "We've already chosen the godparents, and it's not your family." My husband smiled and said, "Mom knows best." I stood up too and said, "Funny, I have a big announcement too." The priest gasped as the truth came out. I never imagined that the day of my daughter's baptism would become the turning point of my life. We had chosen to hold the ceremony at St. Mary's Church in our hometown of Charleston, South Carolina, a place rich with history and charm. The sun cast a warm glow through the stained glass windows, illuminating the pews filled with friends and family. The scent of lilies filled the air, and the soft murmur of the organ set a serene tone. As the priest began the ceremony, I held my baby girl, Olivia, close to my chest. She was dressed in the same christening gown that I had worn decades earlier, a delicate lace garment passed down through generations. My heart swelled with emotion, thinking of the legacy and love that surrounded her. Midway through the service, just as the priest was about to anoint Olivia, my mother-in-law, Margaret, stood up abruptly. The sudden movement caused a ripple of whispers to spread through the congregation. Margaret was a formidable woman, always impeccably dressed and with an air of authority that commanded attention. "Excuse me, Father," she interrupted, her voice echoing off the stone walls. "Before we proceed, I have an important announcement to make." The priest paused, clearly taken aback. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Margaret turned to face the assembly, her eyes scanning the room. After much consideration, she began, "We've decided on who will be Olivia's godparents. And I'm pleased to announce that it will be my sister, Eleanor, and her husband, Richard." A hush fell over the church. I felt my cheeks flush with heat. We? Who is this we? My husband, David, and I had never discussed this with her. In fact, we had already chosen Olivia's godparents, my brother, Michael, and my best friend, Sarah. I turned to David, hoping for some support or clarification. To my dismay, he was smiling and nodding in agreement. "Mom knows best," he said softly, as if that settled the matter. A surge of indignation coursed through me. This was not how decisions about our child were to be made, especially not without consulting me. I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and stood up. "Funny," I said, my voice clear and unwavering, "I have a big announcement too." All eyes turned to me. The priest looked uncomfortable, shifting from one foot to the other. Margaret's eyes narrowed, a flicker of irritation crossing her face. "David," I continued, turning to my husband, "I've tolerated a lot over the years. Your mother's interference, her constant need to control every aspect of our lives. But this is the final straw." David's smile faded, replaced by a look of confusion. "I've decided," I said, my voice breaking slightly, "that I can't continue like this. Olivia deserves parents who stand together, who make decisions together. Not a household where one person's opinion is constantly overshadowed by an overbearing mother-in-law." A collective gasp echoed through the church. Margaret's face turned a deep shade of crimson. "I'm filing for divorce," I declared. Effective immediately. The weight of my words hung in the air. The priest looked as though he might faint. Margaret opened her mouth to speak, but for once, words seemed to fail her. David stared at me, his eyes wide with shock. But why?" he stammered. "Because," I said, my voice softening as I looked down at Olivia's innocent face, "I need to protect our daughter from this toxic dynamic. I won't have her growing up thinking that this is normal or acceptable." With that, I turned and walked down the aisle, each step feeling lighter than the last. The murmurs of the congregation faded behind me as I stepped out into the bright Charleston sun. A sense of liberation washed over me. In the weeks that followed, the divorce proceedings were swift. David, perhaps realizing the depth of his complacency, didn't contest. Margaret attempted to reach out, to apologize, but I knew better than to let her back into my life. I moved back to my parents' home in Savannah, Georgia, seeking solace and support. The familiar streets, lined with ancient oaks draped in Spanish moss, provided a comforting backdrop as I rebuilt my life. Michael and Sarah officially became Olivia's godparents in a private ceremony at a quaint chapel overlooking the Savannah River. The event was intimate, filled with genuine love and support. Through it all, I learned the importance of standing up for oneself, of setting boundaries, and of recognizing when a situation is beyond repair. Olivia would grow up in an environment where her mother was strong, independent, and unafraid to make tough decisions for the betterment of their future. And as I watched her take her first steps in Forsyth Park, her laughter echoing amidst the fountains and flowers, I knew I had made the right choice. A few weeks after I moved in with my parents in Savannah, the peace didn't last long. David showed up at my parents' doorstep. He didn't call. He didn't text. He just stood there, holding a small teddy bear and wearing that same lost puppy expression he always pulled when things didn't go his way. My dad opened the door and immediately stepped in front of me like a guard dog. "Can we talk?" David asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I should have said no, but part of me needed closure. We sat at the little patio table in the backyard, while Olivia napped inside. The air was thick and humid, and my heart was pounding. David didn't waste time. "You overreacted," he said. "It wasn't that serious." I stared at him. "You let your mom hijack our daughter's baptism. You didn't just stay silent, you agreed with her. That's not nothing." He rubbed his face, frustrated. "You know how she is." "Yeah, and you've always let her be that way. I asked you for support so many times. You always brushed it off. Now you act surprised." He sat in silence, then said something I didn't expect. "She paid for the baptism. The venue, the flowers, the reception. Everything." I blinked. "What?" "She told me it was a gift. I didn't think she'd use it like that. You knew she'd pull something. You let her buy control over our daughter's day." That was when I realized he'd never grown a spine, and he wasn't planning to. I stood up and said, "You need to leave." He left the teddy bear on the table. The next twist came a week later. I got served court papers. David was petitioning for joint custody, and not just that. Margaret had filed for grandparent visitation rights in South Carolina. She claimed I was emotionally unstable and damaging Olivia's family connections. That woman had money, and now she was using it to come after me. The stress hit me like a truck. I cried in the shower so Olivia wouldn't see. My parents were supportive, but even they couldn't believe the lengths Margaret was going. She submitted photos from years ago, screenshots of Facebook posts I made venting about her, texts taken out of context, even a photo of me drinking wine at a friend's bachelorette party with the caption, "Unfit mother behavior." I couldn't believe it. This woman was trying to paint me as a threat to my own child. Then things got worse. A week before the first hearing, my dad had a mild heart attack. He survived, thank God, but the hospital stays and stress took a toll on all of us. And Margaret? She used it. Claimed my home life was chaotic and not stable for a young child. David didn't stop her. He just stood there in court, hands folded, eyes to the ground, while his mom dragged my name through the mud. That's when I made my move. I hired a lawyer who knew Margaret's reputation. A woman named Nora, sharp as glass and just as cutting. She did some digging, and she found gold. Turns out, Margaret had a few skeletons of her own. Lawsuits from former employees, financial settlements with hush clauses, and a tax audit that ended suspiciously quietly. We didn't have to say it in court, we just had to hint at it. And when Nora laid out the pattern of controlling behavior, supported by messages I had from Margaret over the years, it started to crack. Still, the judge didn't rule right away. He wanted a full custody evaluation, which meant strangers observing me and Olivia. Interviews, home visits, judgment. All while Margaret acted like she was the victim. Then something happened I didn't expect. Olivia got sick. Nothing serious, just a stomach bug. But she was weak, and I had to take her to the ER for fluids. David showed up because he got notified automatically. While Olivia slept, hooked up to a tiny 4, he sat in the corner. Quiet. For the first time, he looked really shaken. "I didn't know she was that sick," he said. I didn't answer. He finally asked, "Why didn't you call me?" "You let your mom put me on trial," I said. "You left me to fight this alone." I didn't know what else to do. That's always your excuse. He looked at Olivia. His eyes filled with tears. She's the only thing I have left, he whispered. I didn't answer. A few days later, David texted me, "Can we meet without lawyers? Just talk?" I agreed. We met at a coffee shop, sat in a booth far in the back. He looked rough. No suit. No fake smiles. Just tired. I want to drop the case, he said. All of it. Including my mom's. She doesn't know yet. But I'm done. I stared at him. Why now? She told me she'd pay for a full-time nanny to replace you. Said I could move in with her, get custody, and Olivia would adjust. That's when I realized she doesn't want Olivia to be happy, she wants to win. I nodded slowly. Took you long enough. He smiled bitterly. Yeah. I need it in writing, I said. Full custody. No interference. You visit on my terms. Your mom doesn't come near us. He nodded. The papers were signed. The judge approved the custody change. The grandparent petition was withdrawn. But that's not the end. Margaret was furious. She started sending letters, leaving voicemails, saying I'd stolen her grandchild, saying I'd brainwashed David. And then, the biggest twist of all, she sued me. Personally. For intentional infliction of emotional distress. That's where the real war began. So yeah, Margaret sued me. Not for custody. Not for visitation. But for emotional distress. She said I'd publicly humiliated her, that I engineered a divorce to alienate her son, and weaponized a church event to attack a devout family. The court filing was insane. She even referenced the baptism, claiming the entire ordeal caused her anxiety and public shame. She included statements from 3 people who were there, all from her country club circle, who said I acted unstable and vindictive during the ceremony. It was pure insanity. But here's where it got worse. Her lawyer? A family friend who hated me from day one. The guy used to date Margaret's niece and always said I was too common for David. Now he had a stage and Margaret's money. He started feeding this narrative that I was the scheming, manipulative single mom trying to ruin a good Southern family. I was terrified. And the cherry on top? She served me the lawsuit at Olivia's new daycare. Right in front of teachers, parents, everyone. That night, I broke down. I called Nora, my lawyer, sobbing. I was so tired of fighting. Every time I thought it was over, Margaret found a new way to come at me. But Nora? She was calm. She said, "Good. Let her." You know why? Why? I asked. Because this is civil court. That means we get to dig into everything now. All her finances. All her communications. And she's not going to like that. So we countersued. For harassment. For defamation. And for trying to interfere with my legal custody. That lit the match. About a week later, David showed up at my door again. Not to talk. Not to fight. He looked scared. I need to tell you something, he said. And I don't want my mom to know I came here. He sat on the edge of the couch, bouncing his knee. She's hiring a PI, he said. She told me last week. She's having you followed. She thinks she can catch you doing something illegal or reckless. I just stared at him. Why are you telling me now? He looked down at the floor. Because I saw what she did to my dad. This hit different. David rarely talked about his father, just that he died when David was in college. But now he looked hollow. My dad was planning to divorce her. Quietly. He already had a lawyer. I found the emails. She found out, and the next thing I know, he's dead from a sudden stroke. His voice cracked. But the autopsy wasn't clean. There were signs he stopped taking his meds. Which he never forgot. Someone messed with his schedule. I sat there frozen. You think she? I don't know, but I know what she's capable of. He handed me a flash drive. Everything I found about her. Bank records. Emails. Old court stuff she buried. I made copies. I don't know what you'll find, but it's yours now. I had to sit down. My hands were shaking. That night, I stayed up with Nora going through everything. What we found. Multiple sealed settlements. One was with a former housekeeper who accused Margaret of verbal and psychological abuse. Another was with a local contractor who claimed she had him fired from 3 jobs after he called her out on harassment. Then there were weird payments to 2 different PIs over the years, one of which was flagged in a fraud alert from a financial institution. And there was more. Way more. But the biggest twist? An email to a contact overseas. Subject line: Plan B if custody goes south. The body was brief. But the attachment? An application for dual citizenship in another country. For Olivia. Filed under David's name. With forged documents. My stomach dropped. She wasn't just trying to win. She was planning to take my child out of the country. We reported it to the court. And that's when things exploded. The judge ordered an immediate review. An emergency injunction was filed. Margaret was barred from contact, not just with Olivia, but with me, and even David until the investigation ended. But the damage? Already done. Olivia was scared. Her daycare was tense. I couldn't sleep. My dad's health got worse. My mom barely left his side. I was carrying all of it. And then, just when I thought I had a moment to breathe, my car got broken into. Nothing taken. Just searched. All the baby's things were messed up. Diaper bag dumped out. Car seat moved. My glove compartment emptied. No valuables missing. But the next day, a strange number started calling me. I answered once. A woman's voice said, "You think you're winning, but the game's not over." Then she hung up. Now, I've got cameras around the house, a lawyer on speed dial, and a case that's moved way beyond a simple custody fight. But I'm still standing. Because Margaret picked the wrong mother to mess with. After the car break-in and the creepy phone call, I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't just wait around for the next move. I went straight to Nora, my lawyer, and said, "I don't want to react anymore. I want to end this. All of it." She nodded. Then we go nuclear. So we filed for a full restraining order. Not just against Margaret, but against any known associates she had used to follow, harass, or intimidate me. We submitted the voice recording, the email about citizenship, the financial records, and the footage from my security camera, which caught a man in a baseball cap snooping around my porch 2 nights earlier. The judge saw enough. He signed it. Margaret was ordered to stay 500 feet away from me, Olivia, and any daycare or family member affiliated with us. Her bank records were flagged. The court froze her travel accounts. That should have been the end. But Margaret wasn't done. The day before the final hearing on the emotional distress lawsuit, something snapped in her. David called me in a panic. "She's gone," he said. She packed a bag and took my dad's old passport files. I don't know what she's planning. For once, David was actually scared. I called the police. I called my lawyer. I even called the damn airport. And then it happened. Margaret showed up at Olivia's daycare. Disguised. Wearing a wig, sunglasses, and a fake ID that said she was my sister. The only reason she didn't get away with it? One of the daycare aides recognized her earrings from a photo I'd shown them. They locked the building down and called the cops. When officers arrested her in the parking lot, she fought back. Kicked one in the shin, screamed that I'd poisoned her legacy and stolen her granddaughter. It was chaos. She went to jail. That night, I slept for 2 hours total. The final court hearing was 2 weeks later. David testified against his own mother. He admitted to covering for her, to allowing her to push boundaries, to being afraid of her. "I let her walk all over my marriage," he said in court. "I let her ruin it. I lost my wife. Almost lost my daughter. I don't deserve them." I sat there numb. Because he was right. He didn't deserve us. And yet, in that moment, I saw a broken man trying to fix something too late. I wasn't innocent either. I ignored red flags for years. I let Margaret cross lines over and over, hoping David would step in. I stayed silent too long. That silence almost cost me everything. But not anymore. The court ruled in my favor. Margaret was fined, slapped with a criminal record, and banned from ever contacting Olivia again. Her bank accounts were flagged for fraud investigation. She lost her standing at her precious country club. Even her church distanced itself from her. She lost everything. David tried to make amends. He sent letters. Flowers for Olivia's birthdays. Promised therapy. Promised change. But I never looked back. He had a chance to protect me, and he chose silence. That choice had a cost. I raised Olivia alone, with help from my brother, my best friend, and a small group of people who showed up when it counted. Years later, Olivia asked, "Why don't I see Daddy or Grandma?" I knelt beside her, looked her in the eyes, and said, "Because sometimes the people who say they love us do things that hurt us. And when they do it over and over, we have to protect ourselves, even if it's hard." She nodded. Quiet. But she understood. And that's when I knew I hadn't just escaped a nightmare. I ended it. For good. That was the story. At our baby's baptism, my husband smiled when his mother hijacked the day. I smiled back and lit the match that burned their fake little kingdom down. Regret? No. I lost my marriage. But I got my freedom. And Olivia? She got the truth. That's the real legacy I leave her. Let Margaret's name rot on a court document. Let mine live on in a child who grows up knowing her mother never backed down. Ever.